We've heard from a lot of parents, and it's really nice to see some familiar names in the attendee list. And I'm sure that you've received multiple emails from Kathleen Plesnarski, that's me, I'm the executive director, Mr. Joseph Greb, who's our assistant director, and Mrs. Allison Larson, who is our CT supervisor. So the three of us are here with Lou Geld, who will help to moderate this event, just to share with you our safety protocols and to answer some of the questions that came in through the survey, and to also give you an opportunity to ask questions at the end via chat, which Mr. Geld will read out loud, and we will answer to the best of our ability. Okay, you can go to the next one. Okay, so first, let me just say, as you're aware, our Joint Operating Committee, which is our school board that is made up of one board member from each of our 9 districts, did approve our recommendation to move into a hybrid model starting Thursday, November 5th. And this wasn't an arbitrary date, and they weren't arbitrary metrics. This coincides with the start of our second marking period. And the other thing is our metrics were met, and our metrics that we were looking for was that Montgomery County be classified as low or moderate for transmission, and Montgomery County has been and continues to be moderate. And then we needed to have enough of our districts support us moving into a hybrid model to allow at least 60% of our enrollment to participate. So we have been working diligently with our participating schools to get this hybrid model up and running. And I'm very pleased to say that I was tickled pink when our superintendents all agreed unanimously to support us moving into a hybrid model on November 5th, despite the fact that many of our districts won't be in a hybrid model themselves at that point. So I'm really pleased with the amount of support we've received from our districts. So, our number one priority during this time is the health and well-being of our students, our faculty, and our staff. We take all of the safety measures that are recommended very seriously. We've had our staff back in the building since June 22nd. So by now we're all experts at social distancing, mask wearing, and hand hygiene. But we're asking for students and staff to stay home when you're sick. We've set up sanitizing stations and locations for students to engage in regular hand washing and hand sanitation. Masks are required at all times, and we are maintaining at least a minimum of 6 feet of social distancing at all times in our school, and that's very important to us. So in addition to having some safety protocols set up in place, and let me say that those safety protocols are really important, because when we talk to the Department of Health, myself and the superintendents from our districts participated in a meeting with the Department of Health to talk about what special nuances we should think about as a technical school serving multiple districts. And what they told us loud and clear was, in schools where schools enforce mask wearing and appropriate mask wearing and enforce social distancing, they are not seeing spread and they are not seeing closures. So I think that's really important to note, and it's really important to know that we are going to stick by that 100%. We've also made some extensive modifications to our building. We've had an HVAC company come in this summer and increase our outside air exchange and change our filters so that we could maximize our air circulation and filtration. We have had bipolar ionization units installed on every single air handler, and that makes filtering the air a little bit more effective by coalescing small particles that would traditionally get through a filter. All of our water fountains, our major water fountains that are used in the hallway, 4 of them, have been replaced to include bottle fill stations, and each of our students will receive an Eastern Cares mask and an Eastern Cares water bottle and Eastern Cares little sanitizer when they come back into our building. So they'll be able to fill up water so they can still have water throughout the day, but we've disabled the water spigots so that they can't get it without just filling up a container. So our bathrooms have also been modified to hands-free functionality. That includes flushing, towel dispensing, water, and soap. And again, as mentioned earlier, every single entrance there is a sanitation station for employees and students to sanitize, and then every classroom is equipped with sanitizer. We also, over the summer, moved our nursing suite, and one of the CDC recommendations to operate safely in this pandemic environment is to have an isolation room available. So if a student gets sick or becomes symptomatic during the day and there is a concern, that student needs some place to stay until a parent can pick them up. So we have an isolation room that self-contains those students until they're able to be picked up. We also moved the nursing suite to make it larger so that the nurse could see students and still engage in social distancing. So it's really important, and I'm just speaking to each parent out there, it's really important that we screen the kids before they get to school. By the time they get to Eastern, they may have already been on their sending district property, they've already been on a bus, they've already been around a lot of people. So if a student has one of these symptoms, fever, cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, keep them home. If they have two of these symptoms, sore throat, muscle pain, headache, a new loss of taste or smell, congestion, runny nose, nausea, vomiting, diarrhea, chills, keep them home, get them COVID tested. If you have, if your child becomes sick and gets a COVID test and tests positive, we're asking that all parents report that positive case to our special email address, covid@easttech.org. As soon as we find out someone is positive, we immediately start working with the Department of Health to help them engage in contact tracing. So what happens if a student becomes symptomatic at school? Like I mentioned 2 slides ago, we do have the isolation room. As soon as a student becomes symptomatic and it's a concern, the student's teacher will contact our school nurse. She will immediately escort the student to the isolation room to wait for your arrival. In the meantime, part of that is that escorting is to make sure that there's nothing else that's touched by that student until they leave that building, and also to ascertain where that student may have been, so we can just take those extra measures to disinfect where they may have been and had contact. So if your child is sick, let them stay home. There's no award this year for perfect attendance. We're asking people to engage in some civic responsibility for community health and safety. So if the test results come back negative, or you have a doctor's note with a differential diagnosis, then students can return after 24 hours where they don't have a fever and they're not on a fever reducing medication and improved respiratory symptoms. If a student's test result is positive and or the individual is unable or refuses to get tested and they don't have a differential diagnosis, they can return after all 3 conditions are met. 1, 24 hours with no fever, improvement in symptoms, and 10 days since the symptoms first appeared. And that's where our county Department of Health feels that they are safe enough to return to school. And of course, once someone tests positive, it's the Department of Health that will actually clear them to come back to school, and we will be in constant contact with them. So what happens if someone tests positive at Eastern? Everyone wants to know who is it, how does it impact my child? As soon as someone tests positive, we'll close off the areas in which the student was present and begin disinfecting. We must maintain confidentiality. So we will email you. You will get a school messenger email from myself or someone else on our administrative team that will go out to all parents, letting them know that we had an incident, that someone tested positive that was in our building. These are the mitigation efforts that we're taking. And unless you hear from us or the Department of Health, there's no reason to be alarmed, because the only time someone should be alarmed is if they were within 6 feet of that person, mask or no mask, for 15 minutes or more. And we are prohibiting that. The only time that you will ever see kids within 6 feet of each other in our school is for very sporadic instances where it's a life safety issue, where a student might have to spot someone on a ladder very temporarily, or something heavy, a piece of heavy metal has to be lifted by 2 students. But we are prohibiting our staff and our students from being within 6 feet. So we're taking that very seriously, because if someone does test positive, we want to be able to say this impacts no one else in our building, and we can continue learning in person. I'd like to hand this over to Mr. Joseph Greb, our Assistant Director.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody, for turning out this evening. I'm going to go over a bunch of the the logistics of the hybrid model that your child will be entering in shortly. So Eastern has 2 sessions, AM or PM, and your child would attend the session as if they would if we were in full time. So whatever your participating district scheduled your child for, that is the time frame that they will be scheduled at Eastern. So if they were an AM student, they will remain an AM student. PM student naturally remains a PM student. The hybrid model would have 2 days of live instruction per week and 3 days of virtual instruction per week. On there, depending on your school district, is when the students would attend. So if you take a look at cohort A, which would be in person Monday and Tuesday and virtual Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if you are in Abington, Cheltenham, Jenkintown, Lower Moreland, Springfield, the first half of the alphabet, and one of our parochial schools there, you would be Monday, Tuesday in person, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, virtual. If you are a student in the district, Hatboro Horsham, the second half of the alphabet of Springfield, Upper Dublin, Upper Moreland, then you would be virtual Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and you would be live Thursday, Friday. There is also the option for any parent who feels that they would like to remain in the virtual program 5 days a week. They have that opportunity as well. So, also, what does a hybrid model look like? So the 2 days of in-person instruction, the teacher will provide a socially distanced learning program for the students. Each of our labs has been gone over. Furniture has been removed. As Dr. Plesnarski said, a setup has been developed in each program so that students have 6 feet of space around them. Work areas have been delineated, and we'll make it very easy for the students to know where they can be so that they are in a safe zone. The instructor will provide one-on-one instruction, theoretical and hands-on, so students will get both those activities. For students that are doing virtual instruction for the day, they will need to, every day, they are virtual, log in for attendance. Attendance will be taken, attendance will be verified, and then depending on the class, students may have an assignment for the remainder of the day, or the teacher may have scheduled activities where they will use the computer to film their lessons, and they will be live broadcasting lessons to the class, to the students at home. It all depends on each class. However, do keep in mind that days when they are virtually at home, there's a lot more independent work going on than previously. So what, oh, I'm sorry, if you just go back 1 second, Mrs. Larson. Thank you. So reducing the class sizes allows us to provide appropriate 6 feet or more distancing of students in each classroom and lab. Like I said before, we've been all over measuring, moving things and setting them up to provide a safe environment for all students. Student traffic, we're looking at arrival and dismissal, one bus loading and loading at a time, hallways being used as sort of one-way areas so students don't commingle. Staff will be stationed all over Eastern, hallways, arrival and dismissal, helping students get back and forth with ease and get to where they need to be in a safe and efficient manner. By creating a schedule like this, we have probably no more than 125 students in Eastern in one session. Now that's split between 15 programs. So the numbers do vary in each program, but many are single-digit programs with an average of about 10 per class. Some have a little more. So we'll show you some of the areas in here, some examples. So classroom and lab setup, as I said, looking to accommodate 6 feet of distance between workstations. Workstations and the floors in the program labs, where necessary, will be clearly labeled with vinyl decals. Supplies will not be shared among students. The individual sort of toolboxes are being created for students in areas where there is equipment that is not easily shared or split up between students. There will be disinfecting between sessions, and students will be taught on how to do that and coached through the process in order to have everything clean and usable for when they need it. If you see the picture on this screen, you're looking at a portion of our commercial art classroom with the tables that the students do work on. If you've been in the lab in previous years, you would have seen 3 to 4 rows, probably with a foot between them throughout this lab. As you see in here, those were measured to be 6 feet apart on there, and the instructor in this picture is putting together sort of mini boxes of supply. So students need colored pencils and paints and clays and modeling clays, etc. All those will be individualized for each student, that they will have their own materials to work with. So this is an example of signage that you'll see all throughout Eastern. So the first one on the left, the student workstation, you'll see these will be on the floors of areas and the auto labs and the large areas, spaced apart by 6 feet in front of equipment that students need to use, so that students will be visually able to quickly look around a lab and see, these are areas I need to be in that I'll be safe and able to work in. So it'll give them sort of a visual diagram as to where they can go. We have signs recommending students naturally to wash your mask, to keep it clean and sanitized. We have Eastern Cares logos throughout the school with the different information on them. The Stay Safe logos you'll see are being put on areas such as tables and workstations where students will not be working. So those are designed to tell students that, hey, this is an area that we need you to be clear of in order to maintain space. So there'll be a lot of signage around. It'll be very easy to see and distinguish where you can work at and where it is not safe. Some examples of some more labs. So you're looking at protective services, some of the wide open labs where students do a variety of activities from exercises to practice. You'll see, in order to help them, you'll see those circles that are on the ground say student workstation. So they are, in fact, in this lab, over 6 feet apart. So if a student reports to their station to do work for the day, or if they're going to do, say, an exercise routine in this program or some of the other activities, they know if they were within the area of that circle, they are within the safe zone of 6 feet between another student. There are more of these places in the labs than there are students. So if you're looking at, in this case, you're seeing 9 or 10 of these circles, there may only be 6 students in this class at the time, so not everyone will be used as well. Here you'll see some, the 2 side sections are from our culinary arts for the tables. Typically, these are set up in large group areas, sort of like a large U with the instructor maneuvering around. Now they're set up as individual stations for the students. Their materials will be delivered to them. They will have them for the day. In a way, it's almost like Food Network on some of those shows you see, where they'll be given the materials and the items, and they'll be able to work with them with a teacher guidance. But again, the 2 pictures on the corner show you how things are spaced out at 6 feet apart, providing space. The middle picture shows what was our restaurant that is now converted into a theory room to allow each student to have a table, chair, an area to work on when they're in lecture or doing book work that provides 6 feet of space throughout that area. Some of these pictures come from our cosmetology lab to show you. You'll see in the pictures on both sides, the maintained space stickers. Those are areas that students will not be working in because they'll be too close to the other student. You'll see the student workstation decals or vinyl on in front of the hair washing stations that they will use for the mannequins. And that tells you which ones are open and which ones are not. To also help students, excess furniture has been removed from the classrooms. So they won't have the ability to say, oh, I didn't know I shouldn't sit there. There'll be no chair there. There'll just be enough chairs for areas that they're allowed to work in to really help them out to maintain safe distancing. So some other things going through county guidelines and CDC guidelines for the safety of all students and staff, items such as celebrations in the class that have a communal aspect to it will not be happening this year. Shared food, supplies, workstations, handshakes, hugs are all will not be occurring this year during this. As we've been advised, those are areas to stay away from so that we can provide a safe environment. We'll do everything we can to always provide a great educational experience and also an extremely safe environment for all students. So while some of these things sound harsh, they're all being done to provide a really, really safe environment for each and every Eastern student every day that they're in attendance. Cleaning protocols and practices. So increased cleaning and disinfection protocols. So areas prior to students arriving and then after students leaving, there will be cleaning going on in each of our areas at Eastern. There's an entire plan with our custodial staff on how to attack the building when students are there to make sure every area is clean. High touch areas are cleaned multiple times throughout the day. Classroom, lab areas disinfected between sessions and at the end of the day. Wednesdays, every student will be online at Eastern, and the staff will be teaching from remote sites. So Wednesdays, the building will go through a deep cleaning disinfection when there is no staff there. So before class, after class, a larger scale cleaning even on top of that on Wednesdays, and also we'll be walking students through protocols in their classrooms to help them cleanse items and materials and doorknobs and everything as they need to use them. We'll have plenty of that available for the students so they have a clean environment. Okay, so next up, I'm going to turn over the next section to Mrs. Allison Larson. She's our Career and Technical Education Supervisor.
Hi, I'd like to talk to everybody just a little bit about how we're going to be moving around the building, what to do with absences, parking, arrivals, dismissals, basically how the students will be moving around campus. First thing is that all bus students are going to be coming through the main entrance, which is by the flagpole in the front. And the drivers and the drop-offs are going to enter through the ramp exit. That's the same way that we did everything last year. Please make sure that you are not experiencing any symptoms before entering the building, and please don't send your student in if they are sick. We will make sure that we have staff at those locations. And if you look at the map here, you can see that the bus loading is still in the front of the building. After you drive into the main entrance from Turnwood Road, the buses will go around to the front, and the students can park in the areas by where you see the garage labeled. Parents can also park there when they're picking students up, and the students will come out of the ramp exit on the end. Parents will then turn around and exit back the same way that they came in and not go down the bus lane in the front. There will be staff out there to help everybody because it can be a confusing pattern when we first start, but we've been doing the same exact pattern for years and it's been working very successfully. We're going to be conducting some staggered arrivals. Students cannot enter the building before 7:30. So if you are bringing your child to school, please make sure that you keep them in the car till 7:30. The doors will not be open, and we can't have students in large groups at the doors waiting to go in. The same is true in the afternoon at 11:45. Students that are dropped off can get in the building and go directly to class at 11:45. Teachers are in their rooms at 7:30 and at 11:45 to get the students in. We typically dismiss from Eastern at 10:30 and then again at 2:45. But because we don't want everybody in the hallways and getting on buses at the same time, we'll be staggering the dismissals. And they'll be beginning at 10:15 and going through to 10:30 as the buses arrive. And once again in the afternoon from 2:30 to 2:45. We'll be announcing buses and they will be going one bus at a time. Drivers and students who are picked up will be going when their school is announced. Once the bus dismissal is announced, students are going to go directly to the main entrance and the other students will be going to the back entrance. So for example, if Abington students were going to be getting dismissed, we would be saying, please at this time, Abington students are going to be dismissed. They would then go to the buses, we would load those buses. Those students would be gone before we would load the next buses. Drivers and students who are getting picked up go directly to that exit by collision repair, go in their cars and can leave as they're called. This should also help us at the times that students are being dismissed because we won't have as many students in the parking lot at a time or as many backed up in traffic because they'll be also leaving the campus one car at a time, one school at a time. Students have to follow the hallway traffic signs and walk on the right side. They've been put in earlier, obviously, before the students are starting there. And we will be making sure that there's staff in the hallway to make sure, first of all, that all students get out to where they need to be and get to the proper transportation, but also that they're maintaining a safe distance while they're in the hall and while they're traveling from area to area. We've had a lot of questions this year on parking passes, and we will be handing out parking passes on the beginning the first day that students get there. They can still drive on that first day, even if they have not received a pass to date, because we will be handing them out. But right now, the information for that is on the website under the Students and Parents tab. And we've already had many parents who have handed in all of the paperwork that's needed. What's basically needed is the completed form. They do also have to have a copy of their driver's license, their insurance, and the car's registration. We keep all of that on file, and we take your child's name, and then we send that to the high school for approval. The high school then approves that that student can drive. They know that they're coming in to their school with a car, and also that they'll be parking at their building. Once they approve that they are okay to be driving back and forth, we look at whether or not there's any passengers. If you know that your child is going to be bringing another student with them, please make sure that that name appears on the paperwork as it comes in. And then there's also another form under that Students and Parents tab that is a passenger form that will allow those students to make sure that they have permission to drive with your child. We're doing this all for the safety because we want to make sure that we know who's in cars, that you know whose car your child is in or who your child is driving, and that everybody can get to Eastern and back home safely. Absences currently, if your child is sick, as we mentioned many times, you need to make sure that you're keeping them at home. And we also mentioned that we're not going to have an attendance award this year. In prior years, students really wanted to get to Easter and they wanted to make sure that they got that award. So they would come in even when they were sick. We eliminated that to take the pressure off of any student who feels that they need to make sure that they have perfect attendance this year. We'd love to have your student with us every single day possible, but we also want to make sure, more importantly, that everybody is safe in the building. If your child has an early dismissal on a day, you can email that in, or they can bring in a note as they usually do and give it to their teacher who will notify the main office. When it's time to pick up your child, you'll ring the bell at the flagpole. The park right there, there's visitor parking right by the main entrance at the flagpole. And then we will get your child and bring them out to you. So you will be right outside the vestibule as the child is being dismissed. And please make sure that you send any excuses for absences to our attendance mailbox. Many of you have already done that because even as we've been virtual, if a child is excused, an absence form is usually sent in with the child. If you do have something that is already written and you want to hand in a handwritten note, that is also permissible, and we'll make sure that it does get to the appropriate people. But at this point, I know a lot of times it's easier for you to just email us your child's excuse, and we will accept that as opposed to a form to keep students from walking in the hallway more than they really have to. At this point, we're on some frequently asked questions, so Dr. Plesnarski will take it over from here.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Larson. So some of this has been answered in the presentation, but we felt it was really worth rehashing again. These came from the surveys that were administered where you signed up and registered for this town hall meeting. You know, how will safety be ensured? We are asking people to stay home when they're sick. We're encouraging regular hand washing and sanitizing of hands. We are requiring masks at all times and maintaining social distance. And these are the things that they say are the most important for curbing any kind of spread in a school and ensuring safety. We have additional building modifications that also add to our safety features. And I think the thing that makes Eastern unique and makes people a little bit more comfortable to send their children to our school is, as a career and technical school, our kids come in, they go directly to their program, and they're in their program for 2 hours and 45 minutes, and then they leave. There's no cafeteria, there's no changing classes. So we're pretty simple. So there'll be less traffic, less opportunities for people to come together. But we really want to make sure that our kids have the opportunity to engage in hands-on learning with our teachers. And I know our teachers are really excited to have kids back. Okay, so one of the questions that came in was, what kind of PPE should my child have? And so masks, and they have to be 2-ply masks. They have to be worn at all times in the building. We will be providing one as part of our Eastern Cares kit, but we're not letting kids in the building unless they have a mask. And I think at this point in the pandemic, we all carry masks with us at all times because you can't go anywhere without one. Gaiters are permissible if they have 2 layers, and the masks must be appropriately worn, covering the mouth, covering the nose. They must be secured under the chin. And then obviously they could pull their mask down while taking a drink of water. This does not include the PPE that students may need for their program areas, like, wearing work boots if you're in automotive, or, wearing a welding helmet in welding. So there are trade specific personal protective equipment like safety glasses that students need to have, but this is just us focusing on what students need for COVID safety. Okay, will students be wearing masks and face shields? So our County Department of Health recommends masks, does not recognize face shields as adequate protection. So students will be required to wear masks, but we are adding the caveat that those students who are part of a vulnerable population can wear a mask and a face shield for greater protection. Okay, if someone tests positive for COVID, how will parents be notified? So we'll close off the areas and proceed with disinfecting. We will maintain confidentiality. You will receive an email message from me or someone else on our administrative team letting you know that there has been an incident without giving you any specific information. Unless you hear from us directly via phone, then you can pretty much rest assured that as far as we know, there was no direct contact with your child. If your child tests positive, or you've been notified by the Department of Health that your child has had close contact with someone who tested positive. And by the way, they say a lot of the spread that's happening is happening outside of school days. Please email us at covid@easttech.org so we can follow up with you to ensure safety for everyone at Eastern. Okay, so one question was, if someone tests positive, will classes go back to virtual? And I think the guidance on this changes. And of course, the guidance will continue to change as we learn a lot more about the behaviors of this virus. So when someone tests positive, the first thing that we do, and Mrs. Larson and I are technically considered the pandemic liaisons between our school and the County Department of Health. We have a special number and we have a special email that we can get a hold of them anytime, day or night, to discuss potential cases. So we immediately work with them and they will advise us on what to do, on whether or not we even need to close down a program area for any amount of time, whether or not we need to close down a school. The state had issued guidance that if it was 2 students within 2 students or staff, 2 cases within a building in 14 days, that would initiate a closure or return to virtual. And that's a lot looser now. I think they look at whether or not it's a school spread. So that would go through the Department of Health, and we would closely monitor and adhere to their recommendations for our school.
One of the other questions was about mask breaks. And we will be having some small mask breaks that will be 10 minutes or less. During that time, certain program areas, if the weather's nice, could possibly be outside. But no matter what, even if they're inside, those mask breaks will be following protocol as far as everybody being more than 6 feet apart during those short periods of time when we will allow students to take their masks off.
So the cleaning protocol question came up. We have purchased machinery that's called electrostatic spray. This is a machine that they will, between sessions, take through all the program areas that provides a cleansing to each area. It is a spray that goes out throughout each program. It's used in many office buildings and schools throughout the Commonwealth at this point. That'll be happening daily, and then, as I mentioned before, the deep cleaning also will be happening each Wednesday when the building is closed for all staff. The facilities department thoroughly cleans the areas during morning breaks. That's when there are no students in there. They're making sure to get all the high touch areas, doorknobs, chair handles, bathroom fixtures, soap dispensers, and also going through theory rooms and labs. It is quite extensive. They have a plan to start in areas of the building and complete all that within an hour and 15 minutes before the next session comes in.
Okay, one of the other questions was, will Eastern be conducting daily or weekly rapid COVID testing of students? And the answer to that question is no. That is not even readily available to schools at this time. I would assume that if something like that were to become available, and there is discussion about making that available to schools, that would be something that would go through the districts because we are just an extension of them. But again, we're asking for all students to pre-screen before they come in. Our population of students are all juniors and seniors who we are preparing to responsibly enter the workforce or continue their education into a specific career field. So we're just expecting a lot of social responsibility from our students and our staff. Okay, so the big question is Eastern considering returning to in-person instruction 5 days per week? Another parent had emailed a similar question, but like, what would it take to get to 5 days a week? So at this point in time, Montgomery County is classified as moderate. And as long as Montgomery County is moderate, the instructional model that coincides with that is one that allows, that's either virtual or allows for students to maintain 6 feet of social distancing at all times. If you're familiar with other technical schools, you'll know that we're one of the few technical schools that hasn't gone through a comprehensive remodeling. And as a result, many of our lab spaces are much smaller than you would find at other technical schools. So we started the summer thinking that we were going to be 100% in person to start the school year. And as the guidance came out and we learned just how important it is to maintain that 6 feet of social distancing, and Mr. Greb spent hours evaluating our program spaces for capacity, we realized despite the fact that our spaces are larger than what you would find in an academic classroom, we could not hold all of our students and still maintain 6 feet of social distancing. So as long as we're in that moderate level, that's where we'll be. If we can move into a low transmission model, then that would be the time that we would look at bringing back everyone back for 100% in-person instruction. And then what would it take? And again, we continually meet with our superintendents. We meet with representatives from the Montgomery County Department of Health to monitor what the numbers and the data say about what's happening with the COVID-19 in our community. And when it becomes safe enough for us to come back full time where we're not as concerned about social distancing, then that's when that will happen. But until that time, we have to have an instructional model that will allow our kids to be safe and socially distanced.
One of the questions that we've had about transportation is how it's going to be coordinated and how the students will be bused to and from school. And basically the participating districts are providing the transportation as they always do. We have been in communication with them and they have lists of our survey results. Many of the parents have filled out surveys that said whether or not they wanted their child to be coming in hybrid or whether or not their child was going to remain virtual. We sent the lists to the high school. They obviously know who's in what session and which days the students are coming. So if you have not, as of yet, received anything from your high school about transportation, it should be coming within the next few days. They have been working on it. They are coordinating with us to ensure that your child will be picked up. We have been told that in most situations currently, the students that are not in session back at their high school will be picked up close to their home. And the ones that are in the high school, the transportation will run very similar to what it did last year when they were at the high school and then went from the high school to us and then back to the school. It is fine for you to transport your child yourself, and we're also figuring that this year we're probably going to have a lot more parents that are going to take that option if it is something that they themselves can do. We will have people out in the parking lot on the first few days, letting you know what directions to go in and where to drop your child off and where to pick your child up. But if you would like to transport your child yourself, that is absolutely fine.
So this question we spoke to it before, but again, hybrid model, each student will attend Eastern in person 2 days each week in the session in which they were originally scheduled by their participating district. 2 days live in person, 3 days virtual online instruction. So this question comes up. If I choose to keep my child in a virtual model, can my child switch to in-person instruction at any time once I feel comfortable with them returning? We want all the children to feel comfortable at the school and want the parents naturally be comfortable as well. We do ask that if you select the hybrid model and at any time you feel uncomfortable or your child feels uncomfortable, you please give us a call. You do have the option from going hybrid to the virtual 5 days a week. However, in moving to that, we ask you that you stay in that model at least until the end of the marking period, at which time we will know further how things are developing in the county and how the participating districts are planning on going into the next marking period. So we will allow changing from virtual to hybrid at the end of the marking period. But at any time you are in hybrid currently and you want to go virtual, you may, with this, please contact the school. But we ask you at that point that you would stay virtual then until the end of the marking period. This is to provide consistency with the educational process at the school. What does virtual learning look like in a hybrid model? Again, the virtual learning students will check in at their regular time as they are doing currently. Attendance will be taken, attendance will be verified. There will be, dependent on the class, some classes will give self-paced assignments from the instructor. Other days, instructors will tell the students at 9 a.m. we will be doing a lecture. Please, follow along online. And others will be providing guided practice also online. So it's a great mixture in there. The only thing I would caution, there will be more independent or self-paced assignments at this time because the teachers will also be split between live students and virtual. So there'll be a little more in the self-paced assignments occurring during this next phase. So this question comes up at times. I can't speak for the districts. I would, if you are looking at doing hybrid at Eastern and virtual at your participating district, please contact your participating district as they have the say in that. Eastern does not have any say in what type of learning goes on at the participating district. Maximum number of students per class. If you've been in Eastern before, there are no two rooms that are the same size. I mean, some labs, auto labs, are large, other labs are small. So there is no one set size. We had to measure each room to see how many students we can accommodate using the 6 feet rule. The average number of students per class is around 10 right now with this split. Some will be much smaller, some will have a few more on there. So we have that breakdown now. We're also looking at the students that are going virtual will subtract from that number. So that number is changing as we get more information in. As parents decide if they wish to stay virtual, naturally each classroom will decrease. If you have a very specific concern on an individual classroom, please reach out to me tomorrow. My email will be in here later, it could be found on the website. I'd be happy to talk real specifics with you for each program of what we have at the moment, knowing that it is changing as the days go on. If my child is enrolled in a program that has a low enrollment, can they attend every day? At this point, in order to comply with the 6-foot distancing recommendation, students will only be able to attend days assigned during the hybrid model of instruction. So if you are a Monday, Tuesday student, the only days we'll be able to accommodate you at Eastern at this time would be Monday, Tuesday. And this is to provide access for all students to not overload our system in our classrooms. And, hopefully as things improve, we'll be able to go into a further model to bring more students in more days per week.
If my child becomes sick, what steps will be taken so that my child can continue virtually? If your child does become sick and needs to be at home, we will move them over to the virtual model. If your child is expected to be hybrid and be in 2 days a week, we expect them to be in those 2 days. If it's a long-term sickness, we can switch them over to virtual. Once they're virtual, they'll probably end up being there until the end of the quarter. So we're not going to allow students to just take 1 day virtually because they're sick and then move back into the hybrid, as Mr. Greb already mentioned. So you'll be in contact with the nurse if your child is sick. If it is something especially that's COVID related or something that's long-term, but they can still work virtually from home, we will make those accommodations until the end of the quarter. If they're expected, once again, in on those 2 days and they just are have a headache on that day or something that's just keeping them out for that day, please follow the absence procedures and send in an excuse blank for that day for your child if they're not showing up on a day they're supposed to be in school.
Okay, will snow days be virtual learning days? I can't answer this question yet. We will follow the snow day protocol of a majority of our participating school districts. I meet with our superintendents next week for our monthly meeting, and this is one of the areas of discussion, and the answer to this will be communicated to parents as soon as possible. I'm going to assume that our snow days will become virtual learning days, but I can't guarantee it until I know what our districts are doing.
Where do students get changed if they come right from the high school? Our locker room areas can be utilized for storing items and changing if necessary for safety. So the locker room areas will be opened. They will be monitored by the teachers, and the teachers will be following any social distancing guidelines when sending students to the lockers. So things like boots and safety glasses can be kept in the lockers while they're there. Many of our teachers have adjusted the uniform requirements to limit the use of the locker areas so that students don't have to completely change everything, so that they can just wear maybe a chef jacket when they're doing some things as opposed to the whole suit. And the teachers will let you know exactly what any of those modifications are. Obviously, they still have to change if they have items for safety, but we're not going to require in many areas full uniforms. And the teachers will let the students know, or have let the students know, exactly what's required in that area.
Again, uniform requirements, as Mrs. Larson said. So the teachers will be going over this with the students. There's been significant modifications to our programs this year. You probably received a letter from us this summer before the decision was made to go virtual, and it listed what typically is bought for each program. That has been scaled back tremendously. So to help students out with this, to avoid changing if at all possible, except for some areas with safety. So the teachers will go over this with the students. The vast majority of uniform requirements have been modified for this year and will be kept to the minimum possible.
Okay, how are Eastern reopening plans being coordinated with the district reopening plans? Since the pandemic started, I have met with our superintendents on a very regular basis. Historically, the director meets with the superintendents once a month. This summer, we have had countywide superintendent and director of CTC meetings starting out twice a week for the entire summer, and it has since merged to one time a week. So there's regular communication there. It's really hard when you're serving 9 districts to make sure that everything lines up just so. So when you ask, like, how did we pick Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday model when we were deciding and developing our health and safety plan, we worked with our districts to see which one was going to be most adopted by our districts and most in sync, so that we could be in sync with more of our districts. So that was adopted early on with our districts. So we work closely with them. And our districts are very, very collaborative and responsive. So even with the virtual model, there were a couple districts where our virtual schedule, and we stay on our playing field, like our sessions are always, 7:45 to 10:30. We did not change that. Our PM session is 12 o'clock to 2:45. We did not change that. In cases where the district inadvertently put together a schedule that may have conflicted with the Eastern schedule, they were very quick to fix it. So I want to say that we get a lot of support and collaboration from our districts. How will the program sync with the high school schedules? And again, like I said, we maintain our usual schedule. Like this is when they would usually send students to Eastern, so they know to work around our schedule. We didn't go crazy and start putting together a totally different schedule that would mess up theirs. So our schedule and our district schedules should sync. And in cases where we had early indications that they wouldn't necessarily sync, some revisions have been made. But there are some of our districts who are operating a hybrid schedule when they start into a hybrid model on an A-B schedule, which means that sometimes our kids will be coming from home and sometimes our kids will be coming from their district. So the district will be in touch with families about that scheduling, but a lot of accommodations have been made to make it as in sync as possible. Is in-person instruction for Eastern beginning before the hybrid model starts for my district? Yes, it is. And I think that's really, really good news for the kids at Eastern. I never expected that on November 5th, every single district would be able to transport kids to support a hybrid model, especially districts who are not even considering going back into a hybrid model until January. But we had tremendous support, and unanimously our superintendents agreed and our districts agreed to start the hybrid model November 5th. So half of our schools are November 5th and 6th. The other half are the 9th and 10th, even if they're starting later. So this is great news. Some schools are still modifying their plans. How's Eastern staying on top of those discussions and advocating for the Eastern students' unique schedule needs? Earlier today, I sat in a meeting for an hour and a half, had all of the superintendents from the county, a doctor from the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, representatives from our Department of Health and other CTE directors from our county. And we talked about what's happening with the COVID-19 pandemic in our region, what's happening in our county, what's happening in Philadelphia, Delaware County, and our surrounding areas. We are in regular discussions about how this data may impact our planning, and we will always do that planning together. So I want to just thank everyone for attending and submitting these questions, and I hope that we answered them to the best of our ability, and we're going to open it up to answer more questions. But on the screen here, and this screen will be up as we move through the questions, each of us have our email address up here. Please feel free to reach out to us. We hear from many, many parents each week, and it's always nice to hear from parents. And if you want to call us and we can help alleviate your concerns, we're certainly willing to talk through what things are going to look like for your child at Eastern. Okay, I'm going to hand this over to Mr. Geld, who will open it up to the questions that have been coming in through the chat.
All right, thank you. So for anybody that still has a question, if you look at the bottom of your screen, there's a button that says Q&A. If you click on that, you'll be able to type in a question, and we'll read them and try and go through them right now. I did already cross off a few that were very clearly answered throughout this, but let's start at the top. When will we know about transportation for the students being picked up? I think we kind of touched on that, but maybe just to clarify.
Yes, as I mentioned, we've been in contact with the high school. They got lists of the students and whether you were coming in hybrid or whether you were considering virtual. Beginning of last week, I have been in contact with many of the districts. They're working on it now, and I'm not sure exact dates for each one of the 9 districts, but I do know that within the next few days, you should be getting notification from your district about transportation.
All right, thank you. My child, my My child's last name begins with the letter G, and they are in the Protective Services program, and they're a student at Springfield.
So Springfield, the alphabet breakdown would be Monday, Tuesday at Eastern, the first part of the alphabet A through L-I. In this case, I see it saying that she is scheduled for Thursday, Friday. I would just ask you to reach out to Dr. Rittenhouse at Springfield because she would be assigned to us Monday, Tuesday. However, if there may be some special schedule consideration that needs to be worked out there, at times there might only be one class available that she needs to take or something, and we'll work with them if that's the case. But I would check with Dr. Rittenhouse first just to make sure that's all set.
All right, thank you. Are district buses going to follow social distancing protocols?
We at Eastern are not in charge of the district buses, but I have been assured by them that they are going to be following social distance protocols. I have been told to expect more buses from each district because there will be less students on each bus. As I said, we're not necessarily in charge of it. So if there are issues, we'll make sure that we're talking to them and communicating with them, as I'm sure you will. But as of right now, we have been told that there will be more buses coming to Eastern with less students on each one.
All right. If you don't feel comfortable sending your child, will there be any consequences?
We want all the children to be comfortable at Eastern as well as the parents of the children, that they're confident that they're in a safe space. If you are in the hybrid model and you start off that way, and after discussing with your child feel that you're more comfortable being in a virtual model, please give us a call. We'll work with you to get you set up that you're in that virtual model for the remainder of the market.
All right, thank you very much. I think we touched on this earlier, but if a teacher were to test positive, I guess, how would we handle that?
So if a teacher were to test positive, obviously they would no longer be in Eastern and they would be quarantined in their home. We would not send out an email message telling parents that they were positive, because that would be a violation of HIPAA. But parents would receive an email, much like if it happened with a student, that there was a positive case with a staff member, so that they were aware. Now keep in mind, it all comes down to social distancing. If you're socially distanced at least 6 feet apart and you're wearing a mask and practicing hand hygiene, there's no cause for alarm, having been around someone who tested positive, or there's much less cause for alarm. They're not seeing spread when people adhere to these safety protocols.
All right, thank you. If a child that's in the morning class were to test positive, would classes be canceled in the afternoon because the teacher was also exposed?
So there's two things I want to broach with this. The reality of what really happens is that there's never that quick of a turnaround. Like someone in an AM class who was in our building wouldn't get tested and report back to us right away that they were positive. We may not find out for right now. The wait time on tests in Montgomery County is 36 hours, which is actually the best it's been. There was a point in the summer where it was almost 2 weeks that people were waiting for results. But I also, so we wouldn't know that quickly. And again, that's why it's so important that we adhere to 6 feet of social distancing, wear masks at all times, and practice good hand hygiene. So the other thing I want to point out is there's a case that's where someone tests positive. And when someone tests positive, the question is, have you been in direct contact or close contact with another individual? And that's within 6 feet for 15 minutes or more. And so when our students and our teachers answer no to that, nothing else happens. There's no contacts. So if I'm at the grocery store and someone 5 feet away from me is positive for COVID, and I'm not within six feet of them for 15 minutes, nothing happens. If I had been in close contact with that person, and then I walk away from them and I'm in close contact with another person, that person becomes a contact of a contact, and it doesn't spread that quickly and it doesn't spread that easily. So people get a little bit worried about like this sort of domino effect, but if it happened that quickly, we would be in like way more trouble than we have been with this virus.
All right, thank you very much. this one is about internships and how they'll work this year.
Yeah, so we have the ability to run a school to career program this year. So if a student is interested in this, they would set up a virtual appointment up with Ms. Haley Graniker. She will walk them through the process, talk about everything that's needed paperwork-wise, grade-wise, school-wise, business-wise, and then begin the process of reaching out to the businesses to see if they will take the student on. Just one bit of caution, the state of Pennsylvania has added that each potential business that it would have a student in this type of program will need a COVID safety plan. And what we're seeing is that the major businesses or chains do have one, but many of our students go out to smaller businesses and they may not have it. So the process is slowed a little bit until they develop a plan for their business. It's just something we've noticed over the last few weeks that have come in. As for other activities such as clinical or job shadowing experiences, that's really dependent upon the locations. As many people know, our allied health typically go to the hospital to do job shadowing twice a week. We do go through volunteer services, and at this point, that is not in operation. So we're dependent upon those businesses when they do open up and allow students to come in. We will work with them to have those opportunities for the students.
Mr. Greb, just to follow up on that, you just mentioned allied health, and there was a question about that. And is there a benefit or disadvantage for hybrid for allied health since they won't be visiting the hospital?
The allied health does, our lab, if people have visited on tours, has a theory room and also has a hands-on lab. So we do have hospital beds in there. We do have equipment, blood pressure monitors, EKG, etc. in there. So there is a benefit to working on some of that, even though students will be working on mannequins, etc. throughout this year. So there is a benefit to being in person as well.
Thank you. We have two mask questions in a row here. So the first one is, can you elaborate a bit more on the mask breaks? Will this happen inside, and how would we make this safe?
The teachers have been told that they are able to have mask breaks with their students. There will be times that they will be outside, but obviously because of weather and other factors, there will be times that there may be mask breaks that are inside. As Mr. Greb showed you the pictures of a lot of our areas, a lot of them are larger out in the program areas than maybe they are in a theory room. And if we have small numbers of students in there, we should be able to get them more than 6 feet apart if they're going to have an extremely short mask break. The maximum that can be is 10 minutes. So at no time will they be without a mask for longer than 10 minutes near other students. But no matter what, also, those students will be more than 6 feet apart during those times.
And then going along with that, would there be any discipline if a student refuses to wear a mask properly?
Yes, there will be. If students are refusing to wear masks, they obviously will be initially talked to their teacher to make sure that they understand the importance of it and the safety of it, and that they put their mask on. If there is an issue and they're refusing for some reason, they would at that point come down and talk to myself. We would also be contacting the parent to let them know that we have an issue with that, and then we'll be following our disciplinary procedures with students who are refusing to follow rules, the same way we would if they were refusing to follow other rules in the building.
Great, thank you. Bus schedules, I know we just talked about that, but this was specifically about Cheltenham and when they'd be receiving the bus schedule. I'm not sure.
Cheltenham, I would think you'd be getting it very quickly. I have been in contact with them since before I even sent out the list and before we even filled the survey. So I know for a fact that they're working on it. Now there's a lot of moving parts in it because they have to look at where everybody lives, especially in the case of Cheltenham, because they're not in school, and how they're going to pick every student up and where they're going to pick them up. But I can assure you that Cheltenham has been working on it for the past few weeks, and it should be there very soon.
All right, our next question is, if someone in our household is traveling to Florida, would my child need to quarantine when they return? I'm assuming the child is not traveling. It's just someone in the household.
Yeah, at this point, there are certain states, and the states are updated weekly, that are considered hotspots. And at this time, the Pennsylvania State Department recommends that people quarantine when they return from these states, but it's not a requirement. It's not a mandate. And I think that we all know that it's really about what you do when you're in these states. If you're going because your mother lives there and you're taking care of her and she's not feeling well, that's a lot different than if you're going out to some nightclubs while you're there and engaging in unsafe practices. So the answer to that is we are not requiring people to isolate when they return from these states, although a parent could make that decision to do that based on the activities they engaged in while they were there.
All right. How are teachers going to handle teaching students virtually at the same time as in person, especially since children who are in person will be doing more hands-on work?
So if the lesson for the day includes a lecture that's only going to happen once that week, the teacher will include both groups. So the students live will be listening to the lecture, the students online will be listening to the lecture. The hands-on portion that's happening, so if your child is coming Monday, Tuesday, and they're doing the hands-on work, the other students that are at home will be in Thursday, Friday doing that same hands-on work. So they will be getting the same work at different days of the week. The students that are online will be given also assignments to do, and the teacher will check in periodically. But it's just, if you have to picture the schedule almost flip-flopping between Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday. So the hands-on portion the students get, the activities on Monday, Tuesday, the Thursday, Friday, the other students will get on Thursday, Friday. It just sort of flip-flops back and forth.
All right, great, thank you. If my student is out sick one day with something like a stomach virus, do they need to have a COVID test performed and the results received before they can return to Eastern?
So there's two parts to that question. One, if it's a stomach virus and the only symptom that they have is, let's say, diarrhea, then that's only one of the symptoms in the category where two symptoms would need to apply. So you really have to go back to that list if you have one of these or two of these. So, does it qualify as needing to be screened for COVID? The second thing to consider is whether or not the student has a historic illness like Crohn's disease that may lead to digestive disorders, and in which case your doctor can give you a differential diagnosis that will show us that this is something that is chronically happening, and your doctor is assured that it is not COVID related. But again, it still goes back to then waiting until, if you had a negative test result or a doctor's note with a differential diagnosis, you can return after 24 years without a fever and improved symptoms. So the answer to that question is it really just depends what the symptoms are and whether or not there's a differential diagnosis that a doctor can provide.
All right, great. Your first day of classes will be on Thursday, that's right. But my son's cohort starts Monday and Tuesday, so does that mean he would start the following week?
That is correct. If you're assigned Monday, Tuesday, your first day at Eastern live would be the 9th, Monday the 9th.
Perfect, thank you. Is quarantine handled the same for a teacher and students?
Yeah, and the requirement to quarantine actually comes from the Department of Health when they do contact tracing. So I think the only real difference is that if our teachers have a situation where they need to quarantine, they will be forced to stay home, and we will bring in a sub for them. Whereas students, if they're forced to quarantine, they can move very easily over to a hybrid model so that they can still stay on top of things.
All right, and this is not a question, but someone said thank you very much for all of your hard work, and I'm sure we all appreciate that. So thank you for sending that.
Thank you.
Is there a map of the building available? Since my son has never been there, and he'd know where to go.
So all drop off for all students is at the same spot in the building. So The first day coming in, we'll have plenty of staff to get them there. Our building is a giant rectangle. It's very hard to get lost in, and we'll make sure they get there within minutes of arriving.
Absolutely. Right now, that's the last question. If anybody else has a question, we'll give you a minute to post it. If not, you can certainly reach out to the admin team. Their email addresses are still on the screen if you're not ready to ask your question right now or something else pops up later. And somebody else said you guys are doing an awesome job, so thank you for that as well.
Mrs. Morey is really funny.
Yes.
I just want to take the moment and thank all of our teachers and all of our parents and any students who may be out there for attending this session. It was really important for us. I know that this looks pretty much exactly like the PowerPoint I sent out to you 2 weeks ago, but sometimes you just need a human being talking about what these procedures are and answering questions to help you feel more comfortable. And I hope that at the end of this presentation, you feel as comfortable bringing your student to Eastern as we feel accepting them in our building. So thank you for your time.
Dr. Posnarski, you just mentioned that you sent some of this information out already. So somebody asked, would you be sharing these slides? And maybe you already did, and maybe we could get them to get them out somewhere.
So yeah, I can actually send this out again because we did spend some time putting in a little bit more pertinent information. And then whatever I send out or any one of us sends out via the school messenger system, you should notice that it then gets posted on our website so that it's a little bit easier for you to find information. So if you have any parent friends who are like, hey, I didn't get something, you can always check our website because those messages go on there too. So tomorrow morning, I will send this out to everyone with a thank you. And those parents who are not able to be with us tonight will also be able to get a copy of it. And then that message and that attachment will be on our website for everyone's review.
I also would just like to say that I know I got an email during this presentation from a parent who said that they're still questioning whether or not they're getting all of the communication that you need. If you are questioning that, please contact me. Let me know. My staff will look into it. Also, if you haven't been on the parent portal yet, or you're having any problems with the website, please contact me and let me know. And my staff will get back to you and make sure that they can help you navigate through the system. We started with a new system this year that we didn't have before, our new student information system. And we've been really working to make sure that we're communicating with you. This is the first year that we've done everything online as opposed to sending out actual mailings of things. So it's been very different for us as well as you. And if you have any concerns that you're missing anything, please let me know and my staff can work with you to make sure that you are getting everything that you need.
All right, we've got one more question. If a teacher is out for a while and they are quarantining, or I guess if they're just out for a while, would the class go virtual?
So the maximum amount of time that we would see someone potentially quarantine would be 24 days because, you know, you're in close contact with someone else and you're asked to quarantine for 14 days. And if you don't develop symptoms until the 13th day, then that's when you go into that 10 days since symptoms emerged. So the answer to that is no, classes won't go virtually. It's so important for us to have our kids in our building learning. We have many program areas that have instructional aides attached to those programs who can help to continue on the instruction in a hands-on setting. So we want to keep our kids in the building as much as we can.
All right. That was the last one. Great.
Thank you so much for your time and have a wonderful evening.